Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we're talking Senior Bowl. Obviously, the New York Giants have always preferred the Senior Bowl. Dave Gettleman loves to draft guys from the Senior Bowl. And today we're going to take a look at three players who stood out on Wednesday morning during the practice sessions. Obviously, it's on the 30th actual bowl game. Guys like Devonta Smith, still nursing an injury from the championship game, won't be participating. But there's some really, really talented players who we're going to get a good look at, before the NFL draft. And while guys like Gettleman kind of scout these players, he always likes to take those MVPs from the Senior Bowl from the past. And today we found three players that really stood out that could fit the Giants, especially scheme-wise, and what they are trying to do. So, Anthony, before we dive into this nitty-gritty, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I got up nice and early today, hit my legs, leg day. Someone in the comments made sure to remind me, do not skip leg day. I did not skip leg day. I hit the legs today, and I had a good workout. So I am feeling pretty good today, ready to rock and roll and discuss some of these Senior Bowl standout prospects as the Senior Bowl kicked off this week. The Senior Bowl is always interesting because it's always, it's an opportunity for kind of lesser-known prospects to really shine and make an impression on NFL teams and scouts. Because, guys like Dave Gettleman himself, like NFL GMs and the pro scouting departments are there watching these guys, and they get to meet them, and they get to really, well, maybe not this year because of COVID. I don't know how the interview process is going with COVID, but they still get to watch them up close and personal, see if they've made any improvements since the season till now, and then, make some additional notes on them before, we get to the draft process, really. And this is really the start of the draft process. The Senior Bowl marks the start of the draft process for most teams. Of course, they go throughout the year. They're watching film and taking notes on certain prospects. But this right here is like the first piece of draft material that we get in the offseason. So, the Senior Bowl, always got to keep your eye on it, especially for the Giants. They've drafted the Senior Bowl like 4 times in the past 5 years or something crazy. It was like Kyle Lauletta, Davis Webb, and Daniel Jones all won Senior Bowl MVP. So I do think it's very coincidental, but it's also, I don't know. Senior Bowl MVP is kind of like, that's an exhibition game MVP, but I don't know how much stock you really want to put into that. But still, if you watch them throughout the week and you see what they're made of and you see if they're any good, and, it could be really important for NFL teams who are there at the Senior Bowl scouting these prospects. So Alex came up with a few names that he saw that were standing out, and I guess we'll talk about them and see if maybe they're potential fits with the Giants.
Absolutely. And the first one off the board for the Giants in this case scenario is Quincy Roche, who is a second-round target in my opinion. Really talented player. He fits Patrick Graham's defensive scheme perfectly. We run a 3-4 primarily with those 3 big interior defensive linemen. Last year we had Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, and Leonard Williams. And then we have the 2 outside linebackers, which kind of was a problem last year with Oshane Ximines and Lorenzo Carter both going down so early in the season. We had to settle for guys like Jabal Shared and Carter Coughlin, so we didn't really have the most talent at outside linebacker. With that being the case, I think we have to allocate a draft selection toward the position because, the 2 injuries to Ximines and Lorenzo Carter, one being an Achilles, one being a labrum, shoulder injury, those could be significant. And for the Giants, I think Roche offers a really, really talented player who is pretty developed and really fits their scheme to perfection, With Miami in 2020, he was a transfer from Temple. He made a bowl game every single year he's been in college. So with Miami this past season, he picked up 4.5 sacks, 14.5 tackles for a loss. But with Temple in 2019, he had 13 sacks. So the sack numbers dipped a little bit. That could be for a variety of different reasons. He played in 10 games. But the 14.5 sacks, tackles for a loss really stands out to me because it says a lot about his ability in the run game. Finding ways to get into the backfield and stopping running backs, which is really, really good because the Giants love to be able to contain the run, especially on the edge. So if you're playing like a power zone running game outside the tackles or, but in the B gap, you want those outside linebackers who can swing in and really seal the edge if they try to bounce it outside. So it's really beneficial to have a guy like Quincy Roche who sees the game really well, has good vision, can really, just diagnose plays quickly and get into the backfield as a pass rusher. He's really, really fast. I'm going to put a video right here from the Senior Bowl. He beats, I think it was Alex Leatherwood, one of the top offensive tackles in this draft. And he beats him with a speed rush move that was just gorgeous. And I think he fits this scheme really well. So, some of the things to look out for him, he was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year honors in 2019. He really took a step forward with Miami in 2020 in terms of the play competition, the quality of play he was going up against. And he didn't disappoint. He really produced And you like to see that, when you take the jump from college to the NFL, that's a big jump in terms of talent. And really, he really showed that he can do it from Temple to Miami. So he's not prone to better talent and really just disappearing in games. He can match up with the superior talent and play well. So that's a really good thing for him. He really is going to fit that 3-4 outside linebacker. He's a rush linebacker, and I think he's the perfect guy for Patrick Graham in this defense if you're going to look at him in the second round. The Giants, I think, do need a pass rusher, and he's a guy that has such high upside as an outside linebacker. And he's not going to drop into coverage like all that often. He doesn't have that rangy, ability to drop into coverage like some might say Gregory Rousseau has as a former safety, wide receiver in college, or rather high school. So, he's not that kind of guy. He's not going to be able to fill those zones, and maybe he'll be able to fill the flats, but he's not going to be able to drop into zone coverage. He's a guy you want rushing the passer. He has a very diverse and expansive pass rush skill set. So he actually, can use a variety of different moves, which is very developed for a guy coming out of college, especially from Temple to Miami and then the NFL. But Anthony, when you're looking at a guy like Quincy Roche, from all the things I just listed off, does that sound like a good fit with the Giants?
I'll say Quincy Roche is kind of like the Giants, back-to-back years. They went Lorenzo Carter in the middle round, and then they go Shane Zimenez in the middle round. Quincy Roche sounds like he could be that middle round guy for the Giants once again. He's projected to be around the 4th round draft pick. Maybe he'll go in the 3rd just because the edge rusher position is, kind of a premium in the NFL these days. He's going to be 23 years old by the time he gets drafted, which is not really a good statistic there. And in terms of PFF, they have a lot of good things to say about him, but they also have quite a few criticisms, and I'll let you guys know what they say. So one thing is that he's undersized. He had to put on about 10 pounds before 2020 to get to 245, and at his size, he's pretty light, but he's not necessarily fast. He doesn't really have that quick first step, and he doesn't really get off the line of scrimmage as well as you would like. He's more of a technical pass rusher, using his hands well, having good technique, having a pretty solid array of pass rushing moves and nice skills in that regard. But he doesn't really have that like elite athleticism and bend around the edge and speed off the edge. He's not really that kind of guy. He's kind of, has a nice rip move and, can just use his hands really well and can get through offensive tackles. But I will say, in terms of production as a pass rusher, he had 104 pressures between Temple and Miami, meaning there's been no more productive pass rusher in college football over the past 2 seasons than Quincy. So that's pretty impressive. But really overall, the thing that PFF points out the most is that undersized with middling athleticism is going to be a tough combo for Roche to overcome in the NFL. But like I said, he is very technical, and he does have a lot of, things to like. Like, there are parts of his game. Like, there's a clip that I was watching, and I saw him just, really use his hands, kind of do like a chop move, and then swim move right around the offensive tackle, and it was a pretty good offensive tackle. Don't remember who, but it was from a good school. Things like that, those are like the more advanced things. But kind of the problem is a lot of the mindset for NFL scouts when they're looking at edge rushers is they kind of like to look at guys who aren't technically advanced and more athletically gifted because maybe they can coach them to be more technically advanced. But it's kind of hard to coach a guy or prepare a guy to be more athletically gifted, right? He would have to really, really train hard and work hard. And even still, some human beings just don't have it in their body to just freak out and become freak athletes overnight, right? So might be difficult, especially at the age of 23, for him to become an elite athlete. I don't know if that's really possible for him. So really what I see him being in the NFL is just kind of a situational pass rusher. And I feel like the Giants already have quite a few situational pass rushers in Lorenzo Carter and Jabal Sheard and O'Shane Zimenez and Carter Coughlin and Cam Brown. I feel like we're kind of loaded at that position. If we're going to be getting an edge rusher, I feel like we have to get a guy who's more premier and more of a every down edge rusher rather than a situational guy. So not necessarily sure if I see Quincy Roche as a good fit with the Giants. I think, if he's there in the 4th round and they take him, I won't be upset about it. There's a lot to like about him. He's a pretty solid prospect for the middle rounds. But, he's not first-round talent, and he's not really that guy who's going to take over a game, in my eyes at least. So in terms of being drafted for the Giants, I would probably look to go to another position or adjust the edge rusher position in a different way. Not too excited about Quincy Roche, but I do think for another team that is in need of a situational pass rusher, he could be a really good fit.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the consensus. There's a lot of different pass rushers in this draft, but not all of them are really that, appealing. You could look at Kwity Paye as a really good player, but he doesn't fit the scheme of the Giants. He's more of a 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. I like Quincy Roche as a potential guy for the Giants just because he fits our scheme really well, and they're not going to ask him to drop into coverage. They really need an above-average pass rusher with diverse moves, and I think Roche does have that ability and those qualities. And he's someone you can develop, with Patrick Graham, who is a phenomenal coach and has gotten the best out of some of these guys. We're talking about look at what Carter Coughlin managed to accomplish against Seattle. Like, he had a couple of really, really good snaps. And you look at a guy like Quincy Roche, who's exponentially better in terms of his just overall qualities. As a projected second-round pick, I think you can make him look like a lot better and look like a higher value just because he is a scheme fit for Patrick Graham. So that's a guy who's really stood out during Senior Bowl weekend, or really just the whole week. He had a really good practice today, so I wanted to point him out as a potential guy for the Giants to look at. We know Dave Gettleman is going to fall in love with a few guys, so he's one of them. However, moving on to the second player, cornerback Thomas Graham Jr. from Oregon, a 5'11", 197-pound corner. He's a man-to-man guy. He's really excels in man coverage. He aligns outside for the Oregon offense, kind of in a spread concept. He has decent skills and agility. He's a little deficient when it comes to playing zone, and that's kind of what the Giants played a lot of in 2020. But I think the Giants and Patrick Graham played a lot of zone because of their lack of man coverage skills. James Bradbury can hold it down, but the cornerback 2 position was such a liability with Isaac Yiadom, Corey Ballantyne, Ryan Lewis. Just players that weren't getting the job done. Obviously, Julian Love looked a little bit better, but it was such a small sample size. It's hard to say if he's the future or not. We have Sam Beal coming back next year. But Thomas Graham, he's a guy, might be a mid-round pick, maybe 5th, 6th-round pick that you could take a flyer on. The Senior Bowl guy you could fall in love with and just look at his tangible traits. He has the athleticism, but what I will say is, he does lack the ability to go inside. He's really a one-trick pony when it comes to, he's an outside corner. He's not going to follow guys into the slot. He's not going to do those types of things. So if you want a guy who you can develop into an outside corner with decent skills, really, probably about a little bit above average man coverage traits, but doesn't play much zone. That is something I would look at for the Giants, a guy who can do that, because we know that Patrick Graham loved to play cover 1 back with the Miami Dolphins. He played cover 1 50% of the time. That's a run-stopping scheme that really relies on man coverage abilities. So if you have a guy like Thomas Graham, who can line up in man coverage with James Bradbury opposite of him, and then you have Darnay Holmes in the slot, you're looking at 3 cornerbacks who can man up as man coverage options, and then you can really play more cover 1, stop the run, rush the passer with extra guys. Because Patrick Graham loves to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. He likes to send safeties, likes to send linebackers, get 4 or 5 mismatches. The NFL is a mismatch league. You want to put double teams on guys, get 1v1 matchups for your outside linebackers to win those battles. And Patrick Graham loves to send additional pass rushers whenever he can. So feeling confident with your cornerbacks is super important, and Thomas Graham has the ability as a man coverage corner to maybe get that done. I don't think he's going to come in and start right away. He's a guy you want to develop over the course of a year, maybe 2 years. But long-term, he might be someone you want to invest in. Anthony, what do you think about him potentially, getting a look at for the Giants and maybe coming in and just developing under Patrick Graham in his scheme?
Yeah, one thing I noticed about Thomas Graham is really quick feet and really fluid hips. When you watch the film on him, or you watch a few clips on him at least, it just jumps out to you. Like he's got very quick feet, and he's got the ability to mirror wide receivers and run the routes for them sometimes. Sometimes he's a little too over-aggressive, and he kind of gets himself out of position because of that. But, if you can hone him in, I think he's actually a pretty solid player that might make for a late-round gem for a team. He's a guy, again, I think a developmental piece, somebody that the Giants can take a chance on in the middle to late rounds, right, like they've done over the past couple of years with cornerbacks, Corey Ballantyne, Julian Love, Chris Williamson. Obviously not all those guys panned out, but they gave it a chance. Darnay Holmes is another one who looks like he's going to pan out. Julian Love looks like he's going to pan out, right? Those were both 4th-round picks. So Thomas Graham could be another one of those developmental pieces that the Giants look at in the middle to late rounds. Like I said, quick feet, fluid hips, and if you're watching any clips on Twitter about the Senior Bowl right now, the practices, he is dominating. He is showing out. He's mirroring wide receivers, good wide receivers too. He is playing really well at Senior Bowl practice, and that's very encouraging to see, because one thing that PFF Mike Renner pointed out is that Thomas Graham opted out of the 2020 season. He said that a lot of these opt-out guys at the Senior Bowl have looked really rusty. not Thomas Graham, not at all. He looks like he hasn't missed a step. He looks like he's actually gotten better as a prospect. So that's really encouraging to see that a guy who didn't play football for a year was just out there training, working, getting better, and is playing really good at the Senior Bowl. He's a guy that I'm actually excited to watch during the Senior Bowl game. I know I just said earlier the Senior Bowl game is an exhibition. It doesn't really matter, but it's still a way to really watch and evaluate some players, right? Because if he's doing it in one-on-one drills, it's cool, it's impressive. But if we can see him do it in a defensive scheme, comfortable around other people, make some really nice plays and coverage, that's a little bit more telling as to what his true talents can be. So he's a guy to keep an eye on at the Senior Bowl game, and another guy to keep an eye on. Maybe we'll do a film breakdown on him as a late-round prospect because he's pretty interesting, man. Like, he's really got some nice traits. One thing I'll say, though, not the best in the run game, not the best tackler, takes some bad angles sometimes. He kind of just is very aggressive. He's a very aggressive player in both the passing game and the running game. Like I said, he gets out of position sometimes in the passing game, being a little too aggressive. Same thing in the running game. A very aggressive player, very quick player, very nimble. I actually really like watching him. I think he's pretty interesting, and I'm excited to see what he does at the Senior Bowl and excited to see what he does to his draft stock with his performance in Senior Bowl week and see where he goes in April.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the run game, but I'm not expecting him to be, or really any outside corner to be just a dominant run defender. That's not their goal. That's not what they're meant to do. They're smaller guys for a reason. They're supposed to be quick, agile, quick twitch athletes who can follow mirror wide receivers. They're not supposed to be, crashing the backfield trying to stop guys running full speed ahead like Derrick Henry. That's not what they're supposed to do. But I do think you can teach tackling technique. That's what Joe Judge did this whole past offseason. He really just tried to get those live tackling drills in there, really help them, the guys get better in that category. And James Bradbury is someone I look at and say, he's not a good tackler. We see him miss tackles pretty frequently, but he does make up for it in one very specific way. Since he knows he might miss these tackles, he goes for turnovers instead. He goes for the fumbles. He had a couple forced fumbles this past year. So I think that's something you look at like James Bradbury. He's not the best tackler, but to make up for that, he tries to go for the turnovers. He punches for the ball, and he tries to slow guys down just to get some more rallying, his defenders rallying around him. And, that's what the Giants have been so good at. You don't need to be the best tackler. You need to slow a guy down until support arrives. So that's something that, I've noticed from the Giants this past year with guys that aren't the best tacklers. They really just get to the ball quickly and help stop the guys with the ball in their hands. But, Thomas Graham is someone I'm looking at that the fact that you mentioned he missed the entire 2020 season says a lot to me about his work ethic. He really wants to get better. He was obviously training really, really hard for this Senior Bowl showcase, and he's looking really good. And obviously, I'm going to put a couple clips that you can watch throughout this little description of him. But I think he's a good guy that you might be able to put some stock in and look at for the future if the Giants maybe coin him as a potential option in the mid rounds. But the last guy on the list for the Senior Bowl and really stood out today was Shi Smith. Shi Smith. S-H-I, you can pronounce it however you like. He's a 5'10", 186-pound slot receiver. And this guy really, really caught my eye because he ran a route so crisp. He must have created 10 yards of separation on this route. So you're going to see it right now as I'm speaking about it. But he really has just a full package of releases off the line of scrimmage. He can really do a lot of things when it comes to, creating separation right off the line of scrimmage. He's not going to beat you with his elite speed traits. He's not going to, stretch the field like crazy. He's a really good slot option that can run really nice underneath routes, slants, create separation in those short yardage, intermediate yardage situations. And that's something the Giants really value because when you don't have a great offensive line, the pass blocking is not going so well, you need to really locate those first and second reads quickly like Daniel Jones did last year. And having guys that create a lot of separation really, really quickly is super beneficial. So, obviously you have Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate as your primary slot options. I think Golden Tate's going to be cut. Most people do. Sterling Shepard can play slot and outside. Sometimes they play Z and, slot receivers. So you have two guys next to each other. I think, having a guy like Smith and Sterling Shepard together would be really beneficial. You can never have enough slot options. And he's a really crisp route runner. That's kind of what I like about him. He creates separation immediately off the line of scrimmage. He offers that to your quarterback, who's looking for those underneath routes. And he has that just quick speed right off the LOS. So I think that's really good. Some people are comparing him to Jamison Crowder. I think that's a really phenomenal pro comparison, actually. He can really, use that short intermediate range to complement the way he plays. And he makes some really fantastic catches. There's one catch he made during the Senior Bowl. He leaps up and high points a ball with his athleticism. Really, really impressive. So I want to see more of that. I'm going to obviously put the clips as we're talking about him. But, just to see a guy from the slot who can make wow plays like that and really has really great body control when in the air and catching footballs at its highest point, really impressive. He's not going to be like the most athletic and just imposing wide receiver. He's not the best blocker as a wide receiver. That's not his game. But for the most part, I think he's a pretty good route runner, and I think he creates separation really quickly, and I think that's something that will benefit Daniel Jones if they elected to go that route. He's another guy that may be in the 4 to 6 range, in my opinion.
Yeah, another guy, developmental guy. That's really what we're talking about today. Is the Senior Bowl developmental guys, right? Shi Smith, slot receiver, and really has the potential to be a force out of the slot. If you're watching him at the Senior Bowl, keeping along with that on Twitter, he is running some excellent routes and he's making some impressive catches. Really, nobody. I saw one clip that somebody really kind of locked him down, but it was really more of a great defensive play. I think he ran a decent route, just great defensive play. But he's really been getting a lot of separation in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. Another guy I'm excited to see in the Senior Bowl game, maybe see if he can continue to translate this when going up against a different defense, not just one-on-ones, but an actual scheme. Can he, feel the spatial awareness kind of aspect when he goes up against a zone defense, things like that, things that slot receivers really need to do in the NFL. When you're going up against a zone defense, a slot receiver has to be very cognizant of where they are at all times, sit between those zones and make a tough catch. Haven't seen that from Shi Smith because it's just, one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. But that's something I'll be looking into at the Senior Bowl game. But one thing I'll say is he made that high point catch that you mentioned, and that really was an impressive catch. Like, that really caught my eye. He went up there, high pointed it, and like twisted in the air and just laid all the way out for it. Really put his all into that, put his heart into the Senior Bowl one-on-one practice, and that was pretty cool. And yeah, like I said, really impressive catch there, and a lot of really nice routes. Very quick, very twitchy. Really just creating separation. Had a nice head fake on one that really got him open. So a very smart receiver. If he's doing those little things that really just boost your separation even more, right? Because he stemmed the route really well, and then he puts a little fake at the top. But the head fake that he does just like really opened it up for him and created a bunch of extra separation. So all the little things like that, the extra things that you're seeing from a guy projected to go in the later rounds is pretty cool. And then, of course, he's going in the later rounds. You have to keep this in mind. This is a really loaded draft class. There's just like tons of really good receivers at the top, which is going to push these guys down to the later rounds. So a guy like Shi Smith in this draft class, maybe he goes in the 6th round, 5th round. Maybe in another draft class, he goes in the 4th, 3rd round, right? So keep that in mind, that a lot of these wide receivers, late round wide receivers, are better than what meets the eye in terms of their draft projection or prediction, right? So Shi Smith, another guy, keep an eye on him. I think that, the Giants are definitely going to prioritize the wide receiver position. I think they have a couple guys on their roster already that they feel like they can develop, but I don't think they necessarily have a guy like Shi Smith who just is quick out of the slot and can run some really quick routes, right? So I don't know if they have that on their roster, so maybe if they look to add that to their roster in the middle rounds, Shi Smith could be a target. Of course, I do believe that they're going to try and land a big name in free agency or at the top of the draft. But man, you can double dip, you can triple dip. Just keep loading up the offense with playmakers. Offense wins games in this modern NFL. It's all about the offense. Look at the 2 teams that we have in the Super Bowl. Look at the Chiefs, man. They are like all offense. Yeah, of course they have solid defenses because you have to be a good, well-rounded team to make it to the Super Bowl. Both of those teams, but really the heart of those teams, man, is the offense. Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look at how many wide receivers that they have. Scotty Miller is like a beast now, right? Because he's playing with Tom Brady, but he's just a good player, right? Like, they've got 3 really solid receivers. The Chiefs probably have like 6 solid receivers. 2 of them don't even play just because that's the Chiefs. All they do is just load up on wide receivers. So the Giants could absolutely do that, man. They could draft 3 wide receivers in this draft class, revamp their offense, just fill it up with playmakers, and Shi Smith could be one of those receivers that they snag in the later rounds. Add a couple playmakers alongside the ones that we have. Obviously, we want to improve the ones that we have or improve the talent level that we have. Dave Gettleman and John Maher both promised to do that in their postseason press conferences. So, again, Shi Smith, keep an eye on him later rounds. I really like his fit. I like his game. I love the wide receiver position, love to watch it, love to break it down, and I really love to see good route running. That's my number one thing when evaluating wide receivers. I need to see good route running. And so far from Shi Smith, or Shi Smith, however you say it, sorry if I mispronounce it, but that's what I like to see, good route running, and that's what I'm seeing from him.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are 3 really well-performed players with the Senior Bowl this past day, and we're gonna go be looking at guys as the week goes on and just evaluating the Senior Bowl players, the ones that stand out specifically, because we know the Giants have looked to the MVP of the Senior Bowl as a draft prospect every single year for the past couple of years. So that's really interesting. We're going to check out more guys as the week goes on. But as always, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Fireside Giants. And we're going to be doing a Jalen Waddle film breakdown tomorrow with Chris the Entertainer. He is hyped for it. We're hyped for it. We know what Jalen Waddle has to offer, so I'm really excited for that. You guys are going to get into some awesome content. So I hope you guys enjoy that video. But as always, thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.